And welcome. This is Roger Brooks Live. I'm here today with my good friend and our first guest and our 100th guest on American Real, Anthony Brunelli. Tony, welcome to the live show.
Thanks, Roger. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and we're here today, unlike our other two interviews where we are living in some different times, right? This past week to 2 weeks has been, I would say, unprecedented in that we've had to change our lifestyles very drastically. I'd like to just start out by asking you, how are things going with you down in Florida, and what is your current state of mind?
Things here are actually great. My wife and I were saying yesterday that life really hasn't changed much for us. I mean, and it made me reflect, one, on how much life has changed for so many, but also the fact that when I look at it, I mean, I think it goes to how we've set our life up. And it's one of the reasons why, I think we're talking today. Is that if my words or my actions or anything could help somebody in this time, because there is a lot of fear and panic going on, I'd like to be that source of light, because even though these times are really are a cause to reflect and not panic, but be cautious. I think it's a time for a real massive change that needs to happen, which is, the title is The Gifts of COVID-19. And I think there are real gifts that can come out of this experience. But if we don't heed and start making some changes, I don't think that those gifts are going to be realized. And I think you're going to have something that's more of suffering and trauma.
And when you say changes, what exactly are you referring to?
Changes about, changes. Well, I think this is an opportunity. I think that life is for us, not against us. And that I think everything is a mental construct, and when you think about it, it's about where you place your consciousness and where your level of consciousness is. And I think that the last 6 years for me have primed me for this moment. And I'm very grateful, and, not to go down and get too distracted, because people can go back to the interviews that you had with me about the transformation that happened in my life, and the utter despair that I was in, from the hockey injury and the unrelenting anxiety to thoughts of suicide. When I look back, there's a part of me that died then. And that was the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me. Because the part of me that died back then was the part of me that needed to die, which was an egoic construct that I was living my life on. And now, I mean, as we were talking a little earlier, I have a very unbelievable sense of inner peace and calm throughout all of this. And I don't think I could have obtained this without going through what I went through over the last 6 years. So I'd like to be the light that can shine that for other people, so that it can help them through. Because there's a lot of panic and fear going on right now, and that's the thing that concerns me most. It's not the disease, it's not the COVID that is making me cautious. I'm not afraid of that at all. It's the panic and fear and our response to it, and not only the decisions we didn't make, the decisions that we're making, but the decisions we're going to make in the future should not be based on fear and panic.
So, Tony, what do you say to folks who are having fear and panic at this moment? They may be watching this, or they may be watching later, and they're fearful for their household, for their children, for their parents. There's just worry and fear all around. They may not have had the luxury of preparing for this, so to speak, from a mental, from a mindset standpoint. What do you say to those people who just really aren't prepared at this moment?
Yeah, that's a That's a really, really good question, Roger, because it's not easy, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It wasn't easy for me, and it was the hardest thing I ever went through. But this experience that we are all collectively going through is the hardest thing that I think almost any one of us has gone through prior to people who were in the Holocaust or who have served in wars and all of that. So this is a collective effort. So what I would say to people now is that a lot of us are confined to our homes. Our way of life has changed, and it actually is what's going on right now is a mourning, because there's a death, and instead of it being a death of a close relative or a friend, it's a collective death that we're all experiencing at the same time. I actually think that is the most wonderful thing that could be happening for us right now. And I know that sounds odd because there are people dying and there are people getting sick, but you have to look at things. If you want things to change, you have to change the way that you look at them. So instead of getting worried and upset and panicking about this, am I going to get sick? Is my loved one's going to get sick? Look, I experience those emotions just like everybody else. I'm not above any of those, but the tools that I have right now help me manage them and help me change the way that I think about things almost immediately. And I wouldn't be able to have had this 6 years ago prior to the tools that I have. And one of the greatest things that I really wish that a good people will pick up, because it will help them not only immediately, but it will help them long term, is some sort of meditation practice. I think right now, meditation is probably one of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself right now. And I know people are kind of standoffish about it. Some people are afraid of it. Some people say, I can't meditate because I can't stop my thinking. All of those kind of different excuses. And I think an experience like this almost might force people into it, because you don't want to resort to drugs or alcohol or abuse or physical things. This isn't a real opportunity, especially because, it may be months, maybe many months that your life has changed in a way in which you're going to be home. So I think now is the opportunity, whereas you might not have had the opportunity before because people say, well, I'm too busy, I've got to work. There are no excuses now. And I don't care what kind of meditation somebody tries to explore. I do transcendental meditation, which I highly recommend. I don't know what the status is of right now, if you can go, because you actually have to go and learn it. But there are sources online that might. But mindful meditation, there's an app that I started with called Headspace.com. That's my introduction. I did that for a few years, and then I went on to transcendental meditation. And transcendental meditation is a mantra-based meditation, and mindful meditation is basically just sitting in silence with your eyes closed and basically observing your thoughts, your feelings, sounds, all of those things. And the great thing about what I do in transcendental meditation is that it gets you into what's called a transcendent state. And it is a state that is your actual it's actually who you are. Not to get too technical right now, but in other words, it brings you to yourself, to who your real self is, not your thinking self, not that chattered thinking mind, because the majority of our thoughts are not even our thoughts. They are mind constructs that have been handed down to us from our childhood, learning behaviors at birth. And it even goes deeper than that, and it was inherited from our parents. Are really mostly motivated by a subconscious, and most people aren't in touch with that. And a lot of people actually have fear because there's been trauma. Every single person that's on this earth has had trauma and has dealt with trauma And right now we're dealing with huge amounts of trauma. It's a collective trauma. And, we need to kind of come together to work through this trauma. But the only way that you're really going to work through your own individual trauma as well as this global trauma is for you to come back to yourself. And there are these tools that will help you do that. And, that's one of the reasons why I'm very happy we're having this discussion right now.
Well, thank you. And I know some of the things we've talked about in the past, which may be extremely relevant right now. You like to talk about awareness, and you like to talk about being present. How are those two things important in a time like this?
Well, they're one and the same. And, awareness and presence are just different words for the same thing. And, basically that's what meditation is. And, whereas meditation is a technique, and it's not a cure-all. Like I want to state that, like you're if you start meditating, there is proven science behind it that it's going to reduce your heart rate to a normal level. It's going to calm you down, and it's going to do really great things to your biology, which is wonderful, because in the heat of the moment, when you're in fear and when you're in anxiety, what's happening is you're having huge amounts of cortisol that's being injected into your system, and your body and your mind worked as one. And that's the thing that we really have to understand. And that's why meditation is really great. But meditation is only effective when you don't use it as a crutch, as like anything else. Like you could abuse anything. And I'm not saying you would ever abuse meditation, but the meditation is going to reveal yourself to yourself, and it's up to you to do what you will with it. Because when people first start meditating, there's things that are going to come up that are not going to be very comfortable for yourself. There are things that are deep-seated in this mind that you may have been trying to avoid most of your life. And through that avoidance, there's been many things that have replaced it, like, addictions and abusing things, and, just not being the real who you really could be. And so this is our time. If there's ever been a time in our collective history, the people that are on Earth right now, this is it. This is the time. And my concern is, if we do not do what we need to do in that time, that our world has already changed. It will never go back. Life is about change. Life, that is what life is. It's continual change. And it is about death, and we are going to die. And our life as we know it and have known it is dead. It's gone. And so we're going to have to go through a grieving period. And I'm concerned about the people who have so much trauma in their life that they've been dealing with, that they're not going to handle this really well. I mean, not to get too negative, but right now we're doing what we can to stop the spread of this. And the implications from this are so vast, financial, social, that, we have to really look at everything, and we have to really understand what is happening here, and make sure that we're not reacting out of panic and fear, that we're doing things smart, that we're making decisions rationally. And, no good decision is ever made done out of fear. The great saying is, you have a choice between fear and love, choose love. And, I know that's kind of a generic and kind of obscure term, but realistically, what love is that internal mechanism in you that is deep down inside of you, that when you peel the layers of fear and anxiety and all of those kind of things away, that's who you are. That's who your essence is. And so what we really need to do right now is to peel away these layers that have been on us, and let that essence come through. And that will help your fear and your anxiety and your panic. And it will help it immediately. It will literally, the first meditation that you do will help. And the great thing about meditation is that it builds on itself. And so it's not quick, but you will have immediate release. But it has to be a practice. It has to be something that you practice daily. Like I meditate twice a day. for 20 minutes, once in the morning and once sometime in the late afternoon, early evening. And so it is, I can't explain to you how much it has transformed my life. And both with the anxiety that I was having, with the social relationships, with my family relationships, with the relationship with my wife, my kids, how I interact with other people, my career, and, you know, wonderful synchronicities start happening to you when this starts. And when you start revealing who you are, you start meeting the right person at the right time, or you know, and to get back to this situation we're in right now, the real key is some people, it's too late. They have abused their bodies. They have not eaten healthy. They don't do the proper things to maintain life, and they're extremely vulnerable. And other people who have done those things have built up their immunity. And so why do some people get it and other people don't? You know, a lot of it is based on, you know, what past histories are with health. And so this is also a time to start really great practices with health, with eating, with getting good sleep, a meditation practice, all of those things. That's why I say it. These are all gifts right now. We're given a gift. And if we don't see it as a gift, and we see it as a negative, and we see it as trauma and pain, and we start thinking about, you know, the future and what could happen, then we're really going to go down a rabbit hole that isn't going to be good for either of us or collectively.
So we have a comment from Jeff Faldall. He's talking about we must learn to neutralize the stress. Do you obviously what you're saying is similar, right? We have to. That's what meditation does, neutralizing any fear, anxiety, stress. Any comment on that, Tony?
Yeah, the only thing that there's one word in there that I would just change, and that's try. Try is not a very good. Try is a fun.
In fairness, he said must. We must learn to neutralize the stress.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's even, you know, I mean, it's nitpicking with words are very tough. You know, it's like if I said God, even when I say love, I don't think the majority, I didn't know what love meant, until a few years ago. And it didn't come through a thought process. It came through the suffering and the allowing, myself to suffer and become present. And then it revealed itself. So I understand what he's saying, but we always have a choice, because think about it right now, Roger. All of our levels of consciousness, where we focus our conscious mind on, is different. Like right now, you're listening to me, but you may be looking at a clock saying, "Oh, well, it's this time," or, you know, "Oh my God, that burrito I just had for lunch." You know, you always have the ability. It's the most wonderful thing in the world is not only are we consciousness, because that's really what we are. We are an awareness. That's it. In a body, in a body that's going to die, and but our consciousness and the energy of the consciousness lives forever. So, but you also have an individual consciousness of what you can focus on, and the way your mind works is subconscious and conscious. And so when you're driving a car and you're going many distance and you're listening to music and you get to a place and you say to yourself, "I don't even remember driving there." That's your subconscious taking over. And so what has happened is right now, I feel that the subconscious has taken over the reactions for people. And I actually think that this virus, this so-called pandemic virus, and I say that very, I'm just using it because everything is a mind construct. Now, I'm not saying that it's not real, but our reality is based on our thoughts. And not only individually, but collectively. And so collectively is what the what happens in this. And like, look what's happening in Syria. You know, how many people in Syria right now are probably worried about this virus? They're just worried about surviving, you know, without having a home and the mass migration and all of those kind of things. We have to really put things in perspective. And so I actually think what we're here in life to do is to continually keep expanding our consciousness. And that's what we are. And that's really what our role is here. And you can do that in a infinite number of ways. And that's the beauty of life and living at this particular time, is that we can choose every second of every day of what we want to do and how we want to react. And in turn, that changes our life. So if we collectively, and you and I have talked about it before, the way nature works is really, it's not really the survival of the fittest like we once thought. It's really about a majority rule, like a 51%. So if 51% decides, like birds that are flying south or whatever, they've discovered that it's like the 51% rule. At least 51% of the beings or the species decide, and they do it. And I think that that's our opportunity right here, is that if we can get even just a small percentage of people to raise the level of consciousness to another level, we can actually change the outcome of all of this. It's great that what we're doing on a material level, right now we're confining and we're making sure that the elderly are, and we're trying to get enough masks, and we're trying to get the tests, and we're trying to do all of those things. All of those things are great, but they're a material thing, and they only work to a certain point. But what we all need to do is we all need to raise the level of our consciousness. And one of the greatest ways that I have found out, and the only way I'm talking to you is through experience. I don't expect anybody to believe me or take my word for it. I would really love them to experience it. And so that's why I'm with you today, is because I experienced it, and I did things that helped me through it. And I live my life in such a way right now that I have such a sense of inner peace, and it's fantastic. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't have stresses and I don't have momentary moments of anxiety and fear, but they really pass quickly. And I immediately get to that because I have the tools. I have the tools that will help me get to the place that I need to be, which is really the true self.
Thanks, Tony. So let's shift a little bit and get into something that you also like to talk about, and that's what really is reality.
Yeah. All right. Well, this one I have to watch because it can get a little too deep. Because again, it's about you only can act and speak and do things on the level of consciousness that you're at. Now, when I say that, I was actually having a conversation with somebody and they got a little offended, and I could understand how that could come about because they didn't understand what I was saying. I wasn't saying that I was better or worse. I was saying that your level of consciousness will determine your life. And so if you're not at a level of consciousness that can understand a certain thing, then you're never going to understand it, which is what I see in the world right now. We have a lot of leaders that our level of consciousness is quite low, and they're operating out of that level. And things that are being instituted right now are based on that, and they're affecting a lot of people. And so what our goal is to raise that level. And one of the only ways that you can really raise it is to shed the egoic mind way of thinking, which for me, purposefully, one of the greatest ways is through meditation. And I keep saying it, but I can't stress it enough, because your conditioned mind will control your life. So if I have to be very careful, because I'm telling you, even every day that goes by, one of the intentions that I have is to raise the level of consciousness that I have. And so I have certain practices that help me do that. And there are things yesterday that I didn't understand that I understand today. There are things 3 years ago that I couldn't even possibly understand that I understand now. So in essence, I actually started doing a lot of research about a lot of different things, quantum physics. When I had the brain injury, I studied the brain, and I every day I read about the brain and how the brain works. And in the beginning, it was very difficult. And it's like learning anything. If you had to learn Spanish right now, or when you learned to bike. If I told you and you never rode a bike in your life to just go ride that bike and I didn't show you, it would be very difficult. You'd make a lot of mistakes, you'd get hurt and do all of those things. But once you learned it, when's the last time you rode a bike, Roger?
Probably 3 years ago.
Could you go, if I told you right now to go ride a bike, would you be able to?
Of course.
Of course. So there you are, is that once you get to a certain level, you don't go back. There's no going back. It's just raising. The key is you don't want to stay at the same place, because the wonderful thing about life and the universe is that it evolves. It keeps evolving. And the universe is going to evolve whether you want it to or not. And so the gifts of the COVID-19 right now, that's the universe evolving, whether you like it or not. You may not like what's happening, but it is the universe's way of evolving, because the universe is for you. It's not against you. It's just the way that you're perceiving it at the moment. And, my wife and I, we actually go out on daily bike rides anyways, but now we go out and now we see people out walking that we've never saw walking, and exercising and doing things, walking their dogs. These are wonderful gifts right now. Time with the family. So I'm kind of digressing, but so reality is basically a mind construct, that everything is mind, everything is mental, everything has been based on a thought. And what is a thought? Can you grab a thought? Can you measure a thought? Do you know where a thought comes from? No, but our whole life is based on that. Everything is based on it. Nothing could be done without the thought to begin with. The thought has to be the thing, and then the action is. And so that is the dual nature of both of those things produces everything that we have in the material world. But there is far more that we don't know. We only know a speck. And even that we don't even know. So for the longest time, we've kind of gone against the stuff that we don't know. We just write it off. And I was there. I think the big dark night of my soul, when I look back and reflect, yes, there were physical things that happened to me. But when I really think about why this happened is that my soul was broken. I didn't have, that was one area in my life that was lacking. And what happens is that because everything is cohesive and we are all one, like everybody thinks that they're living a life. I've got my life, I've got my kid, I'm doing this. The thing they don't realize is that you are life. You are part of a mechanism from stardust that literally your life is everybody's life. And every decision that you make affects everybody around you, as small and as big as you can possibly imagine. Every thought that you have, everything is just energy. And what we've discovered now through quantum physics is that everything is vibratorial. Everything is a vibration. And when scientists looked, they thought it was the particle. And wonderful Einstein came and he didn't know what the hell was going on. And when he looked at it, all of a sudden it became a wave pattern. And then then it goes back to being a particle. So what is it? Is it a particle or is it a wave pattern? The answer is it's both. And you know when it is both is when you're looking at it. So he discovered that when you look at something, it changes into a vibration. That's an unbelievable thing. And the weirdest thing, and the thing that took a long time for my mind to grasp, is that we are everything in the universe is 99.9% space. And you're like, wait a minute, knock on this wood, I've got a desk right here, and it's not what you think it is. So when you start to go down that kind of rabbit hole, it starts opening. Oh my God, is this thought that I'm having right now, is it even real? And then you start saying, can I change my life based on my thoughts? And the answer is, of course you can. You're never going to change the universe and the universal laws that are there. But if you work within these universal laws, you will be able to transform and change the way you live your life.
Well, that's pretty deep there. And yes, I do have a couple of follow-up questions. One is on meditation, because I think you explained that very well, and how much it helped you, right? But for people that have never done it, what do you recommend? Where do they start? I know you mentioned there's an app, there's some videos on YouTube, but can you just take us through, if I was going to meditate for the first time today, what would I do?
Yeah, I mean, meditation can be really as simple as just sitting in silence and closing your eyes. You could go on a walk and you could do a walking meditation. A meditation is as simple as watching your breath. Go up and down and just feeling your breath, feeling the sensations, listening to the sounds. And if you do that every single day, you've got to practice. And because of that practice, see, it's kind of like the bike analogy, and also you have to start somewhere for a foundation. You need the foundation. I actually think that the place that we find ourselves in right now in this world collectively is that the foundation was not on solid ground. The foundation that we laid, whether it's our banking institutions, our government institutions, our healthcare institutions, all of those institutions were built on sand. And all it took was this tiny, it's not even alive. Do you realize that this COVID-19 is something that's not alive? This thing is not alive, and it's creating this. All it's doing is it's a microscopic thing that's in the air that's just looking for a host. It's looking for a place to land. It's the most peculiar thing, and look what it's done. The universe is as big as that little microbe. So when you think about that, I know that is a really, really deep statement, but that microbe is the same thing as the vastness of the universe. And when we understand these kind of principles, we really change the way we really look at things. So to get back to the meditation, I think right now more than ever, I mean, even 6 years ago, there's so many tools that people can utilize. There's like Deepak Chopra has on his website, meditation tools, and basically now I see a ton of people doing online group meditations. I know that through the TM organization, whereas people aren't going to the offices anymore, on the East Coast, they're suggesting people meditate together, because the more that people meditate together, and they don't even need to be in the same space to produce an effect. So 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. So I actually meditate before 7 a.m. because I wake up earlier, and for me, that's the best time for me to meditate. But I've been like clockwork meditating at 6 p.m. collectively, and you can definitely feel the difference. The app Headspace, I think, was a wonder. I used that for a long, long time. It's a nominal fee. Who knows right now if they're waiving fees right now just to help people. People have all the access in the world. There's no excuse to finding it. You can go Google meditation and, how do I do it? But the simple act is there's no trying in it. It's really just an act of allowing yourself to just settle down naturally. And the way you do that is by sitting in silence with your eyes closed. Or if you were doing a walking meditation, just as you're walking, just have no purpose, no place, just walk and experience your footsteps on the ground, the birds singing. Don't label anything, whether it's, that's a robin, that's a whatever, just listening to it. And some magical things will start happening. I cannot stress to you enough the changes that will happen in your life from that simple act. life is really, really simple. We've just complicated it.
Well, thanks for explaining that, Tony. Appreciate it very much. I know you also, when we spoke beforehand, we talked a little bit about, a rough agenda here. One of the things you wanted to talk about was pendulums, and that they need to be fed, and that there's a negative energy force. Can you get into that a little bit and talk to us about what that means?
Yeah, I mean, this is what is going on right now is a classic example of that. And, you and I both know, because I told you about a book that I started reading by a Russian physicist named Vadim Zeland, and it's called Reality Transurfing. The book that you have right now is Reality Transurfing in 78 Days, which I highly recommend. It's a great way to start. The Reality Transurfing books are quite big, and at one point they were all online. You could actually listen to them. I can't seem to find them right now. I don't know why, but I would order the book, but I would start with that. And I love it. I love his take on it, because here he is a scientist, but he's combining the science with the spirituality of who and what you are. And, it resonates. I'm sure you could speak for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I went through it, 78 days, and it's transformative for sure.
Yeah, there's no question. But if you're not ready for it, just like we said, the levels of consciousness, you'll put the book down and you'll say it's malarkey, whatever. I think right now, I think there's not many people that, especially now, because people are really searching, they're really, really hurt, and they're really in a lot of trauma. I think they'll be more open to that, because that's the one great thing about adversity. Adversity really is the only thing that awakens you, because when you're in your comfort zone, the last thing you're thinking about is awakening. And that's what life is. Life is just a series of adversities. And when you're first going through it, you call them adversities. And then once you go through them, they're not adversities anymore. So that's a good illustration of what kind of reality transurfing and pendulums is when you first call something a adversity and you get through it, is it no longer an adversity? Right? So then what is an adversity?
It's in your mind.
It's a mind construct. It's all based on the future. And guess what, Roger? I know this is going to blow you away, but the future doesn't exist. Nor does the past. The only way they exist is right now in the present moment, because the present moment is all there ever was. It's eternal. So you are eternal. People are afraid of dying. They're afraid of non-existence because they don't realize who and what they are. And when you stop being present and living in the present moment is when you create fear and anxiety. And so what's happening right now, is a product of that. And so one of the ways to get through this is to become present, is to live as fully present a life as you can. And now more than ever is the opportunity to do it. There are no excuses. You can't say I'm too busy. I have work. I've got this. There's no excuses right now. That's why I think it's one of the greatest gifts about this period of time. There is no there's no coincidence that we were all born in this time. We were meant for this time. We were meant to be born at this time. So what we call adversity right now, we are going to look back in the rearview mirror. And the way I think about it is we are going to evolve and live in a world that is unbelievable. And we just have to start with these practices and the way that we're perceiving things, because reality is not what you think it is. You have to start changing the way that you look at things. And I know that's easier said than done, but I'm telling you, through meditation and through these certain practices and starting reading books, and you may not understand certain things right away, but keep with it, and slowly you will. And so,
go ahead, finish your thought there.
Go ahead. I just wanted to back to what a pendulum is. So our reaction to this COVID-19 is a pendulum. I'll give you one particular example. People, as soon as they started quarantining and they started hearing about it, especially here, really only here in the United States, what happened? People went to the supermarkets, and what did they do? They bought toilet paper.
Yeah.
They bought out toilet paper. Why did they do that? What is a very, very fascinating look at all of this and our psyche and what we think and how we respond. And you could get mad at people like that, but there's no purpose of getting mad because they did it out of fear. They did it out of panic. But that's one of the things they did, and that's a pendulum. And you know how it came about is that once somebody went into the this is how a pendulum works. It's a negative energy pattern that comes about, and it needs to be fed. It's almost like it's a life force, which in essence it is, because everything is. And so one person went there, and next person saw somebody buying 5 rolls of toilet paper, and then they bought it out because they said, if that person's doing it, I have to do it too. And then people started reporting it on social media, and then it went across the country. It is the absolute perfect example of how a pendulum works. And in the end, Roger, there's no reality to it. It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't have to make sense because that's how a pendulum works. And guess what? It's going to, a pendulum goes this way and it goes that way, and it's these extremes. There's a really great book called The Kybalion. Kybalion. And it was a book written in I think the early 1900s. And it was said that it was written by these 3 initiates, and it's a hermetic teaching. It's basically the teachings of the ancient Egyptian quote unquote god Hermes Trismegistus. And it's really, really powerful. Basically, that book, it's kind of said that almost every single major religion came out of ancient Egypt through this Hermes. And there were, up until that time, there were really no books. It was really just passed on through words and through what they called initiates, who had to pass it on so that it would never die, because they couldn't write it down, because they would have been killed. Because anytime you went against the powers that be, they would squash you. So what they had to do is they had to pass it on. I recommend anybody reading that book, and actually you can go online and just listen to it because it's in the public domain. But one of the great things is the oh God, it's escaping me now. The like up and down and good and bad and hot and cold. They're all the same thing. They're all based on, so when does somebody determine when it's something hot and something cold, right? Like, what is hot to you and what is cold to somebody else? Now, you could say a scientist says, well, water boils at this 212 degrees Fahrenheit, I guess, and water freezes at 0 Fahrenheit. But if you were on Pluto, that's really, really cold. Or if you were in the sun, that's really, really hot. So, they basically, these things, they're really on the same line. And so that's another way of kind of bringing yourself back to what real reality is because it's almost like a judgment. Oh, I'm too hot. Oh, I'm too cold. Well, what is that? It's really of the same thing. And because we live in this experiential world, because that's really what it is. The only way that you know that you're alive is that you're aware that you're alive. That's it, right? How else do you know that you're alive?
That's it.
You're just aware that you're alive, right? And so all you are is this awareness, experiencing all these different things. So one of the reasons that I bring this up, because it's another tool in which you can help yourself through a situation like not only this, but everything, is that really watch your thoughts and watch judgment. It's one of the greatest things that you can do is to have the awareness when you are labeling something. or when you're judging something. It's okay to observe. And you and I have had this conversation many, many times. And it's a really difficult thing at first, because we're so ingrained in these thought patterns and these mind constructs, and what we think is good and what we think is bad, and what we think is right and what we think is wrong. That is what meditation helps you do. It helps uncover. You don't do anything. I want to stress that you're not doing anything when you're meditating. The only thing that you need to do is sit your butt down on a seat and close your eyes, or on a park bench, or in the grass, or wherever it is. That's the only thing you're doing. Once you get yourself to that point, let the universe take over, and just allow yourself to just be. And slowly, what will happen immediately, you will have some relief. You'll feel better when you are done meditating. I don't know many people that I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, I feel worse after I meditate, and physically, I mean, now there could be saying, oh, I don't like some of the thoughts that I'm having, but, ultimately, it will make you feel better, and it'll be collective. But I think the pendulum idea, that toilet paper thing is really perfect. Because it shows you what happens with the way we are connected as human beings, but we're not connected to ourselves. When we're connected to ourselves, we look at that and we're like, what are they doing? Why don't we all just get one roll of toilet paper so that everybody can have one, and then tomorrow we'll go get another one? But because we have fear and panic, that's the result of it.
I'm glad you explained that, because I was wondering myself how that all happened, and it just makes sense. It just makes total sense. So let's talk about a couple of books and some people that I know you're in tune with, and that is Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'd like to talk about him first. I know you've read some of his books, you've listened to his videos. What does Dr. Joe have to offer that you may want to express here, Tony, and then offer others to read some of his materials?
Yeah, I think he is, he's really come into his own right now, because, it's like the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and vice versa, and like myself, the last 6 years of what I've gone through primed me for this moment in time, and so what I looked at was adversity back then, I now look at as a gift. I mean, it's just really a remarkable thing. And I have to be honest with you, I have never heard anybody articulate what I'm trying to tell you better than Joe Dispenza. Now, there are some people that have turned off by him, but I got to be honest with you, the guy, when you listen to him, he knows his stuff. I mean, he's a doctor, he's a scientist, he's studied the mind, he's done many, many, many tests. He does these retreats and constantly testing, and it is transformative, and he literally it's changing people. They're getting rid of illnesses, and I know that sounds like, wow, quackery and all of that kind of stuff, but I would have probably thought it was too 7-8 years ago. I probably wouldn't have been into it. So I don't what I think Dr. Joe would say is what I say is, don't believe a word that I say. Go find out for yourself, which is what he is. So, just start. He has some meditations. His books are really fantastic. He has one called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. He is definitely an expert on how the brain works, and how we think, and how our emotions. So really, I wrote something down. Another one is Eckhart Tolle, and he just put out a video today. He said that fear is basically certain thought forms that are focusing on future events. They haven't even happened, but that is what creates fear. So fear is the emotion, and that's what Dr. Joe talks about, is that, okay, all right, people, this is good, because people are going to have these emotions, and they're going to be like, well, Tony, that's really great, but I have this emotion because I was in their place. I remember it didn't go away. That I thought I was going to have to kill myself and then I had negative thoughts. I know where you are. I know where all of you are who are in panic and fear. I know it. And I'm only speaking to you in this way because I didn't think I was going to get out of it until I surrendered to it, until I just allowed it to be there. And I accepted the fact that it was there. So when we have those emotions, the way out of that is to become present. So right now, if people are experiencing these panic modes or these moments of fear and anxiety, one of the greatest things that you can do is find a way to become present, whether that is through watching your breath, whether that is engaging in a physical activity, going on a walk or a run that's getting your body and your mind working together, whether that's creating artwork, whether that's doing gardening, whatever it is that can change your state, then that is a really powerful thing and bring you into this present moment. Because as Eckhart Tolle always says, is that think about it right now and become present. Do you have any problems right now, Roger, right now in this present moment?
No.
The present moment, here's the interesting thing. And this is so simple, but it is going to be so obscure and so deep that it's going to miss a lot of people, is that all that ever exists in the present moment. Right now, there is no COVID-19 right now. There is none. Right now, there is none. Until you start thinking about there is. And there are people that are experiencing COVID-19 and you're going to say, well, what about them? And then you're going to say to them, what am I experiencing right now in this present moment? And can you, if you stay in the internal present moment, can you get rid of all fear, anxiety, disease, sickness? Is it possible? I don't know. I don't live in the present moment all the time, but I know when I become present, I have no problems. I think that's ultimately our goal.
Wow. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's actually pretty profound, because I never.
It's so profound
thought about it that way. But you're right. When our minds are focused on the present moment, and I know for the last week, I've been here in my office, 12, 15 hours a day. I go in, take breaks here and there, but I've been so focused on trying to get the word out to help as many people as I can through interviews like this and other things that I'm not thinking about this. And I put out a post this morning, reinvent COVID-19. I came up with my own initials and
Beautiful.
sayings for what does that mean,
Beautiful.
You're right, but I never thought of it that way. So thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I think there are great masters that have lived that. I think Jesus is one of them, Buddha, and they didn't get to that place overnight. They did it through great suffering and great adversity. And again, it goes back to it. It's like, just please, every single person that's listening to this right now, just right now, think about adversity that you had in the past. Think about whether it's small or big, whether it was a divorce, whether it was getting over a death, whatever it is, think of an adversity that you got over. And now, would you call it adversity? Did something come out of that had expanded you, brought you to a higher place, raised your conscious level? Of course it did. So now would you go back and say, oh my God, that adversity, you label it differently. So is it even real? And the answer is no, it's not, because it is a complete mind construct. That's the way our mind works. And our minds are there, they're ancient, and they're there to so-called protect you, because back in the past, that's what they thought they had to do. And so what I really believe is the real purpose of life is to get out of mind, to get out of your mind and get into that transcendent state in which every possible wonderful thing that could ever be exists. But as soon as you start bringing in the way the mind works, it doesn't. It immediately brings it down. Or what if tomorrow I get it? What if this? What if that? Immediately it brings down. And guess what that does? It lowers your immune system. It is not acting out of love. It's acting out of fear. And so, it really is about this opportunity. Now is the greatest opportunity in everybody's life, because it is bringing you to the present moment. It is never in the face of our existence, of the people that are on this planet right now, have we had the opportunity to really discover who we are through the present moment. Because in the end, all you are is the awareness of this life. So in essence, it's like Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. Yeah. You are all the hero on this journey. You were put here on this particular time, on in this particular era, to overcome this, and to not only overcome it, but to thrive. And that I'm very, very excited about. I'm very, very concerned with the panic and the fear. But the more and more, like, people like you, and continually doing interviews like this, and this is why I expressed to you today why I wanted to do this, because, in the end, I have such a wonderful life. Like, I looked at my wife this morning, where it's beautiful, it's sunny out, where, she's out there working in the yard. I was just painting. Our life is I have wonderful kids. I just got back from seeing my grandkids, and I really reflect on my grandkids, because they are the reason I want them to have a wonderful world. Everything that I'm doing right now is really for them and for their life. And so that's the journey that I really am on right now. And in any way in which I can help do that. And one of the things that we can all do collectively, people are asking, what can we do? There's a lot of great people that are rising to the occasion. This, what the single greatest thing that you can do right now, when I say you, I mean the collective you, is to evolve yourself as a human being, to really know who you are. That's all you're here for. And that's the greatest thing that you can do right now. The single greatest thing you can do is for you to evolve personally. And now is the chance to do it. Use this time that you're home confined to do this, to find who you are. And you are really nothing but pure love. And that's it. And so through you finding who you are, you will attract, and you will emit that. You will become the light. You will be that light for everybody else. And that's what the world needs right now, is that. Not only now, but when we get past this.
Wow. Thank you. So we have a few minutes, and I know there's one more topic that you really wanted to discuss today, and that is death, but not having a fear of death. If you could get into that a little bit, Tony, talk about that. I know you have a book nearby. I would love for you to read a couple of those quotes from that book. And when I was talking to you earlier, I actually wrote down a quote that you said, and you said, all of the fear comes down to the fear of death.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when you break down your fears, I would say almost all, 99% of the fears that you have, which maybe even be 100%, is literally the fear of non-existence, the fear of death. And unfortunately, ancient civilizations did not have this fear, especially the Egyptians. I've been doing a lot of reading and listening to and studying about ancient Egypt. It is utterly fascinating. I recommend, as a way to pass this time as well, do that. And the stuff that we're finding out right now about the pyramids. Did you realize that there are pyramids that were built not only in Egypt, throughout the entire world, that are being discovered? And they're starting to realize that the pyramids were collectively built on this almost the same latitude line. And the constructions were as precise as the Egyptians. And I know I'm kind of going off, but the Egyptians did not have a fear in death. And they were a great model. I'm not saying that they were perfect, but they were a higher advanced civilization. And so, the experience that I had 6+ years ago, and what I've gone through, is that I had a death. And what we are all going through right now is going to be a collective death. It's the death of life as we've known it. And we have to understand that. And the only way to get through I really feel a situation like this is for you death. And most people are so afraid of that. They're so afraid of that. And until, like, I was given a gift of that experience because a part of me died. And it's wonderful because I don't have that fear anymore. It makes me enjoy life, and it makes me enjoy what's really, really important about life, like my family and my kids and my grandchildren. I can't express to you the love that I have from my grandkids. I've never experienced a love like it. So a lot of that, I think, stems from minimizing my fear of death. Now, I don't want to die, but I'm ready. I'm ready if it happens. But guess what? While I'm here, I am going to live life to the fullest. So there's a great book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I highly recommend this book right now for everybody. I literally have given this book to many people, and it has transformed their lives. Literally people had spiritual awakenings just reading it. So let me just read a couple of little quotes about chapter 17, which is Contemplating Death. It is truly a great cosmic paradox that one of the best teachers in all of life turns out to be death. No person or situation could ever teach you as much as death has to teach you. When you really think about that, how profound that is, and we're so afraid of that. Can you imagine if we just 1 or 2, 5, 10%, we embraced it a little bit, we experienced it. I do meditations on my dying, and believe me, it was very intimidating at first, but now it's just become part of the process of living life. Let me highlight a few other ones. It says, what are you doing with life? And that is what death asks you. So when you really think about it, it's like, what are you doing with your life right now? And why are you doing it? Why are you doing what you're doing? Are you doing things because you're afraid of dying? Are you doing things because you're afraid of what you're going to lose? Or are you really, really enjoying the wonderful nature that life is? And I have to tell you that I've lived a very wonderful life, but until recently, until the last 6 years, I really, really understand, for me, and what I think collectively is really important. And that is really about the connections that you make in life. And, personally, I'm lucky because I've been able to do something that I've loved my entire life, which is my art. So, I only hope that people can do that. And now for me, it's not about, oh, I have to do this for a living. Oh, I got to make a living. I got to do this. And how many museums can I get into? How much can I get for a painting? It's about really enjoying the process. And I can see a real change in my work. And I'm really excited about that. Life is not something you get. It's something you experience. Life exists with or without you. It has been going on for billions of years. You simply get the honor of seeing a tiny slice of it. If you're busy trying to get something, you will miss the slice that you are actually experiencing. And I think that's one of the quotes that you really like.
Yes, I love that one.
That I can go on and on, but I don't want to get lost in death, because really ultimately what death is life. It's kind of like what I was talking about with the Kybalion and the extremes. Death and life are really on the same path. Birth and death are the same thing. When one thing dies, another thing is born, or another thing is transformed. It's really about transformation. And so that's what this time is right now. This is the time of one of the greatest transformations of human history and humankind and human evolution. And that's what we're facing. So you cannot look at this. If you're looking at this as a disaster and a pandemic, which is what the news wants you to think it is, then you're going to have some suffering, and I'll let you suffer. I'll be there for you when you won't want to suffer anymore, but I'm not going to be a part of that suffering. I'm going to continue to find out what's the greatest part of life and how we can use this situation to transform our lives, not only individually, but collectively. And that is why this is here for you today, all of us. It's the time. We're here. We were born for it. This is definitely our time.
Wow, Tony Brunelli, this has been very enlightening. I thank you so much for all this information. You helped me today, for sure. Thank you for telling us your gifts of COVID-19, which you have brought to light. And you know what? Maybe we'll do this again in about a week just to check in with people. If
Sure.
that
And I thank you for the platform, because for the last few days, I've wanted to have some sort of outlet to share the experience that I've had to help people. And, I hope I did that.
Absolutely. And you're always welcome.
Thanks.
At a moment's notice.
All
Thank
right.
you so much. Thanks for listening, folks. Have a good rest of your Saturday, wherever you may be.
Take care.